Okay, Boker Tov. Today's daf yomi is Shevuos daf Lameches Shevuos 38, and today's daf yomi is dedicated for Shemir for Chayalim, Hatzal for the Shvuyim, and a Yeshua for Am Yisrael on the Seis Tzara. We're going to start on the top of Lamed Ches Amud Aleph 38a at the top on the top line. So we had said in our Mishnah, Shavuos HaPikadon Ketzad. What's the way in which a shua of a deposit takes place? The person says, Tainli Pikadon Sheli Eish Biyad. Give me the deposit that you have in your hand. And he makes him take an oath 5 times, whether in front of the court or not in front of the court, and he denies it, then he's liable for each and every one. That's what the Shavuos HaPikadon says. That's what our Mishnah says about a Shavuos HaPikadon. So Tana Rabbanan, so the Gemara cites a brisa klal. So we say, Eino chayav ela achas klal, that if a person includes in his general denial many different oaths, he's only going to be liable for one shvus apikadon, for one carbon asham, but pay rate. But if he specified each and every one, meaning to say, when this person denied it, he denied all of them at once, and he's liable for only one Shavuos HaPikadon. But if he specified them, he's chayav al kol achas v'achas, divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says if he specifies that he's liable for each, only for one. But if he made one oath for all of them together, he's liable one time. But if he specified that he's liable for each and every one. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yehuda says, if he says, Shvua lo lecha, lo lecha, lo lecha, hayva kol achas v'achas. If he takes an oath and he says, not for you, not for you, not for you, then he's liable for each and every one. The Gemara is going to analyze this price in depth. Rabbi Eliezer argues with both of them, and Omer, he says, lo lecha, v'lo lecha, v'lo lecha, shvua. He has to say the then chayav kolachas ve'achas. If he mentions the shvua at the end of all of them, then he's liable for each and every one. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says if he mentions the shvua at the beginning, he's liable for each and every one. But Rabbi Eliezer says only if he mentions the shvua at the end, he's liable for each and every one. Come along, Rabbi Shimon Omer ad sheyomer shvua kol achas ve'achas. He's not going to be liable for each and every one unless he mentions shvua before each and every one of the denials. So those are the 4 positions. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. So Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Shmuel. The Kolal Shel Rabbi Meir, where Meir says you're liable for one, that's actually referring to the Prato Shel Rabbi Yehuda. That's referring to the case of Rabbi Yehuda where he says shvua lo lecha, lecha, lecha. So therefore, that's considered the prat of Rabbi Yehuda. So what Rabbi Yehuda calls where he's denied each and every one, that's the klal of Rabbi Meir where he's liable only once. Meaning to say when he says Shavua lo lecha v'lo lecha, and it's connected by a vav, all of these oaths together, then he's only liable one. The klal is Rabbi Yehuda, when Rabbi Yehuda says Shavua lo lecha v'lo lecha, and he does not combine them with one vav, which is a klal according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is the prato of Rabbi Meir. This is the specific of Rabbi Meir, because since he doesn't combine them with a vav, it's all very specific ones, and he's liable for each and every one. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar, that was the position of Shmuel, but Rabbi Yochanan says, Hakol Modim, everybody agrees with when there's an expression of the V'lo that Rabbi Yehuda said, the V'lo lecha shehu prat, that's actually a specific, like Rabbi Yehuda said. Well, when is Rabbi Meir arguing with Rabbi Yehuda? Only in a circumstance where Ella below lecha, so Rabbi Omer prat, Rabbi Yehuda Omer klal, where they just say lo lecha, that Rabbi Meir says it's a prat, Rabbi Yehuda says it's klal. So ezehu klal shel Rabbi Meir. So what is the klal of Rabbi Meir? When he says shvua she'en lechem biyadi, where he doesn't say it for you, but he says just a general thing to all of them at once. Shvua she'en lechem biyadi, where you have nothing, all of you have nothing of mine. So, what's the nature of the dispute between Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. Shmuel Daik mi Braisa, Rabbi Yochanan Diek mi Masnisen. Shmuel makes an inference from the Braisa. Rabbi Yochanan makes an inference from our Mishnah. Shmuel Diek mi Braisa. Shmuel makes the inference from the Braisa. Idikama Rabbi Yehuda, from the fact that Rabbi Yehuda says v'lo lecha prata have, from the fact that Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda says and not for you is a prat. Mikal Deshame, Rabbi Meir, this must mean that he had heard that Rabbi Meir had said, the Amar Kwali have. He says V'lolocha is a prat. It must be that Rabbi Meir said V'lolocha is a klal. But Amalei Rabbi Yehuda prat they have. So Rabbi Yehuda responds say it's a prat. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan Amar Travay or Rabbi Meir prat they have. No, both if Rabbi Meir says prat, V'lolocha or Lolocha, both of them are prat. The Amalei Rabbi Yehuda says V'lolocha modinalach. If it's Lolocha, I agree with you that that's a prat. But Belocha Palginalach. But where it's Belocha, that I say is a klal, and I disagree with you. So that's how Rabbi Yochanan reads the Brisa. Shmuel said, no, that's not the way to explain the Brisa, because Rabbi Huda just said the expression of Belocha. He doesn't say anything else about anything else. So if that's the case, Ada Odele Odu Lefubele Ifuge. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say the circumstance where he admits to Rabbi Meir? He should have said the circumstance that he argues with him and say Lolacha. Because according to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Meir says that that's a prat, and Rabbi Yehuda says that that's a klal. So that's the one that he should have specified. Rabbi Yochanan diek mimas nisin. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan also makes an inference, not from the Brisa, but from our Mishnah. He says, Midika Amar Rabbi Meir Shevuos she'ein lachem biyadi, from the fact that Rabbi Meir says that if you say Shevuos she'ein lachem biyadi, that an oath that none of you have anything in my possession, that includes all of them. Klal, the v'lolocha prate happy. So when he says Shevuos she'ein lachem biyadi, that's a klal. So then if he just says v'lolocha, that's a specific. Because if you want to say v'lolocha is a general oath, he should have, instead of saying he should have said the bigger chiddush. He should have said the chiddush of an oath where he specified each one is still a klal. And for sure in the case where he says you have no oath in my possession. Shmuel says, no, Rameir's in the position, whoever says V'locha, it's considered to be the same as an oath that you don't have anything in my possession. So Rameir doesn't have to teach us this. So the Gemara challenges Shmuel with several questions from our Mishnah. Again, what is Shmuel's position? Shmuel's position that the klal of Rabbi Meir is the prato of Rabbi Yehuda. Meaning to say when it says Shmuel V'locha, 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 that is a klal according to Rabbi Meir. That's including all the oaths in one, and he's only liable once. Tanan, so we learned in our Mishnah, v'locha, 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 liable for each and every one. And so it seems proof that our Mishnah says that this is a prat. And since we say a stam Mishnah is like Rabbi Meir, that's not like Shmuel. So the Gemara says, no, take out the vav. Tani v'locha, don't read it as v'locha, take out the vav. The Gemara says, Tashma, give you another attempt from our Mishnah. It says, Telun pikadon, utsumas yad, the gezel va'aveda. It says, give me the deposit or the loan or the theft or the lost object. And if he responds by saying an oath that you don't have in my possession, all of these things, he's liable for each and every one. And we see from here, even though it connects all of them with a love, he's liable for each and every one. And so this is not like Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara says, Tanu, Tsumas Yad Gezel Aveda. No, take out the vav again. Tashma, another attempt. The same question, but Taili Chitin Sa'aron Kusmin, and he's liable for each and every one. So he says, again, take out the vav. Tani Sa'aron Kusmin. So the Gemara says, you really want to think that this Tana made this mistake 3 times? That's what Shmuel has to say. Hi Tana Kohachi Shabish Tani Va'adil. He makes the same mistake 3 times. Ela Amani Rebbe. So the Gemara says, no, our Mishnah is not like Rebbe Meir, but it's like Rebbe. The Amar, who says that Loshna Kazayas, Kazayas, Loshna Kazayas, Kazayas Prate Havi. that he says in a different context with respect to improper thoughts that disqualify a carbon, that he says that if you thought to eat it uh, in the improper place and afterwards to you had at first you had a thought disqualification of a pigul, and then a psul. Rabbi says that the carbon is pigul, and about this that Rabbi Huda says, and about this Rabbi says that if you had thought two thoughts one after the other, doesn't matter if you said kazayis, 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 ukazayis, it's brought to have. It's considered to be two thoughts, and so we see from here that that's like our Mishnah, that whether you connect it with a vav or not, we're going to look at each one of them on their own, and so therefore it's liable for each and every one. So the Gemara says, Tashma mididei, we're going to bring a proof against Shmuel from Rameir himself, because Rameir says, Afil chitos or kusemes chayav kol achas v'achas. Even if you say wheat, barley, spelt, you're liable on each and every one. And so we see from here that this language is prat, and not like Shmuel who says that this is a klal. Tani chita saora kusemes. So again, take it without the vav. So that's what Rameir says. Rameir says, what? Well, what does it mean when he says afilu, meaning to say that Rabbi Meir had said afilu chitos or ksimis. So if that's the case, how is he arguing? Also, the Tanakhama is saying that according to Shmuel. So the Gemara says, Amar Ravacha B'Rei Ravika afilu chita b'klal chitin usaora b'klal suorin ukusemis b'klal kusumis. Meaning to say, even if he made the claim in the singular, and the other one took the oath in the plural, we don't say that the intent of the plaintiff was for one kernel, and he made it a claim for many. So it's possible. So we don't say that, but rather we say that even if the plaintiff's claim was for many kernels, since he denied this and he took an oath, he's going to be liable for a carbon shvur. That's what the chiddush is, according to Ravacha B'Rei Ravika. So the Gemara says, the next line in the Mishnah was, Teli Pikotan Tumas Yad Gedol V'Aveda Sheish Biyadcha. Give me a deposit or a loan or a theft that's in your possession. Teli Chitin Oren V'Kus Sheish Biyadcha. Or give me wheat and barley and spelt. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan Pruta Mikol Mitzterefes. Even if with each and every denial on their own was not worth a minimum, which is a pruta, if by combining all of them together was a pruta, he's going to be liable. So the Gemara is going to challenge this. So Puigi bar Rav Acha Ravina Chad Amar Aprati Mechayev Akol Lo Mechayev. So we learned in the Mishnah that if he says Shevuos She'en Chabiyadi Chitin L'Se'ar L'Kusmin, he's liable for each and every one. So there's a machokas about this. Rav Acha Ravina, one says that when the Tana says you're liable for each and every one, it means, say, when he said Chitin Soren Kusman, that's when he's going to be liable for each and every one. But if he said Elu Chabiyadi, that's not an oath on its own. That we say you're liable in addition to the pratim, but rather the pratim is exactly it. And when it says, it's like he said, Shvuos She'en Chabiyadi Chitin, Shvuos She'en Chabiyadi Soren. And so when Rabbi Yochanan says Pruta Mikul Mitzterefes, what he's saying is only where he says Shvuos She'en Chabiyadi, that's when they combine. Because since you all put them all together. But if he wouldn't say that, then we wouldn't be able to combine them. Meaning to say, even this expression of El Chabiyadi, that includes all of them as an oath on their own. And then it says Chitin Tzor L'Kusmin, there are three additional oaths. And so when Rabbi Yochanan says a pruta from all of them combines, meaning say, even when he combines even when he specifies them, since he says El Chabiyadi, it includes it all on its own. And so therefore he's liable in that manner. Gemara says, Tani Rabbi Chia, how can that be? Rabbi Chia said, that if five people made this claim and each one of them claimed Chitin Tzor V'Tomen, the Kusman, he's liable for 15 sinner offerings. And if you're going to say that he's also liable for the first one, it'll be Esrim Havi, it'll be 20. So the Gemara says, Hi Tana, no, this Tana of this price, so they're here taught the Prati Kachashev the Kol Chashev. It was only counting the specific ones, but not the general ones. But Tana Rebbe Chia Arekan Esrim Chatos. But the Mishnah says Another brisa, he says he's liable for 20. So it does prove that he's counting the close. And Mor says, no, that other brisa, that was referring to Pikadon, the deposit to Masyad, Gez on Aveda. There was four different claims that were made by five people, so therefore we do have 20. So the Gemara says, Rav Amir of Nachman, Hayu Chamisha Tovano. So if there are five people made a claim, well, Amrlo, and they said, Table Pikadon to Masyad, give us a deposit, a loan, Gezel Aveda, Sheesh on Biyotla. Give us the deposit, the loan, the theft, or the lost object. And he says to one of them, I don't have any of these things, and he lists them. And then he says to all of them, and not to you, not to you, not to you, not to you. What's the law? Do we say from the fact that he took this oath to all the other four people, that's just the klal and not the prat, and so therefore he's only liable 8 chatos, 4 on the oath that he swore in general, and each of the four other people is only liable 1 oath. Or do we say, oh, Dilma, or do we say for each and every one he's liable, and so therefore he's liable 20 sinov? Where I said, Tashwan, Tani Rebechia, Harikan Eshem Chatos, the 20 sinov. Either parish, if he specified each and every one, why did he need to tell us that? Is he just teaching us basic arithmetic? Oh, I have the little parish. No, so it must be like this scenario. See up here that is a prat. As the next case in the Mishnah, if a person claims a nasto fitita spiti, you seduced or you assaulted or seduced my daughter, and he says, no, I didn't. He says, I make you take an oath. He says, I'm is chayev. Rabbi Shimon says it's potter because he doesn't pay a kanas on his own admission, so he wouldn't have had to pay if he had admitted it. Nevertheless, even though he doesn't pay the kanas on his own admission, he would have to pay. So the sage has said, even though he doesn't pay kanas, he would have to pay the boshus pugam. So he's liable for korban shvua. My time into Rabbi Shimon. So why does Rabbi Shimon say he's exempt? So he says, "Hov ikar kanas utoveh." Because what was the main claim that the person was making? It was on the kanas, and so on the penalty of the 50 shkalim, and so therefore. That's the reason why we say he's chayav shvua. Amar Rava mashal Rabbi Shimon ma davar dameh. So what is Rabbi Shimon's logic like? Like the following person. Well, Adam she'amar lechavero. It's like a case of a person who says to his friend, give me wheat, barley, or spell. The guy responds, I don't have wheat. And afterwards, we discover he does have the wheat. So he doesn't have wheat, but he does have barley and spelt. The potter, he's going to be exempt. Why? Because he was really taking the oath about the wheat. That's the main thing. And he was swearing truthfully. So he's not chayav a korban on the wheat. And so therefore he's not chayav on anything. The cases are not the same. In that case, he denied the wheat. And he really wasn't denying the barley and the spelt. Because what did he say there? Shevuos. He really only said anything about the wheat. So therefore, that's the reason why he's not responsible to bring a korban. But here he's denying everything. It's really only similar to a case where he says, give me the wheat and the barley and the spelt. And he says, he says, I have nothing. There he says, I have nothing. It doesn't say wheat specifically, then he would be liable. So rather when Ravin came, when Ravin came, he said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Divrei Rabbi Shimon Kanas Utovei Avor Boshes Bukam. According to Rabbi Shimon, he's really only making a claim for the Kanas. He's not making a case for the damages. He's only making a case for the penalty. But really, according to Rabbi, according to Chachamim, he's also making a claim for the humiliation and the damages. But my command, Amar Papa Shimon Savar will shavak inish midi the kids, vitava midi the little kids. And Shimon says a person is going to make the claim for something that's a fixed amount, which is the penalty. He's not going to make the claim for something which is a non-fixed amount, which is the damages. Rabbanan Savar will shavak midi the chin modabe will miftar vitava midi the chin modabe miftar. No, Rabbi Shimon says he's not going to make the claim for the penalty because if he would not admit to the penalty, if he would admit to the penalty, there'll be no penalty at all. So he's not going to go for the weaker claim, even though it could be potentially more money. He's going to go for the stronger claim, which is the damages, or the person can't simply get out of it by admitting. We'll return to Shevuos Apikadon, and now we go to the next chapter, which is called Shevuos Hadayanin. So Shevuos Hadayanin, this is an oath that the judges say that the defendant has to take. And what is that a case? That's a case of what we call moda b'mitzvah satana. This is a case of a partial admission to a claim. And what's his claim? Where the Tana was shtei kesef, where the plaintiff makes a claim of 2 kesef, v'hoda, and the admission was shava pruta, was much smaller. It was not 2 kesef, it was a minimum of at least 1 pruta. And so if a person does a partial admission, then he has to take an oath. What's the source for this idea of Shevuos Modim Amiktas? That's where it says in Exodus 22:8, on Parshas Mishpatim, Akol Avodah Asher Yomar Ki Hu Zeh. That implies that he only admits to a portion of it. And about this, it says, Im lo yimotzei aganav v'nikra ba'al bayis elo Elohim. So he has to take an oath. And the Gemara explains in Baba Kama, Samach Gimel Beis, we learn out from Gzera Shava, Im lo shilach yadel. Also by Shomer Sofer, and Mo Shilach Yado. So in both cases, it's an oath. But it's back to the Mishnah. But if the claim was not from the same context as the admission was not from the same context as the claim, he's going to be potter. Kate said, what does this mean? Let's say Shtei Kesef Libiyacham. The plaintiff says you have 2 pieces of silver. He says, Ein l'cha biyadi ela pruta. He says, no, I only have a pruta. Well, Kesef is silver and pruta is copper, so therefore he's potter. But if he says shtei kesef u pruta li biyadcha, he says I have 2 silver coins and a pruta in your hand. He says ein l'cha biyadi ela pruta, but he says I only have a copper chayav. Then he's liable. If he says manu li biyadcha, but he says you have 100 dinar. Ein l'cha biyadi, he says I don't have anything potter. He doesn't take an oath. But he says manu he says at 50, he's liable. He says, you have 100 of my father's money. He says, no, I only have 50. Father is exempt. So in this case where he says, you have 100 of my father, he says, no. I only owe your father 50, even though he does a partial claim there, he's going to be exempt. Why? Because he's like Meshiv Aved, he's like returning a lost object. Because even though he's doing a partial admission, the Chachamim said he's exempt from an oath so that he won't be afraid to return lost objects. And that's in general by Hashavas Aveda, where if you return a lost object and the person says, wait, I lost much more, then we say you're exempt from an oath. And also here, since he could have denied everything because the other person doesn't know if he paid his father back or not, and he doesn't deny it, he's going to be exempt. Manali biyadcha, he says, you owe me 100. Amrlo, and he says, yes. So machar amrlo today, he says, give it to me. The next day, Nisati Glach, and gave him to Potter. That's going to be a complete denial. And he doesn't have to bring the Shevuos Modim Mitzvahs. But he says, but he says, I never did it, Chayev, because yesterday he admitted, so therefore he's liable. Manali biyadcha, Amrlo, and he says, you owe me 100. He says, yes. The next day he says, and he says to him right away, he says, only give it to me with witness. He says, he says, give it to me because I already gave it to you. Chayev. And they should start off with no b'fnei. He needs to give it to him in front of witnesses. And now the Gemara says, Next case says the Mishnah, which Razav Yeshli B'Yadcha. He says I have basically some gold that weighs a liter. He says, no, you only have silver, potter, because it's not from the same claim. Dinar is obviously biyadcha, dinar kesef. He says they have a gold coin, so they have a silver coin. They're also vitresis, pundion, upruta, chayev, shakol min mepeachas, because they're all the same type of coin, even though they're different currencies. Kor tuaye, ali biyadcha, and here they have a bushel of wheat. He says, I only have a half a quart of kidneys of legumes. He's potter. But he says, he says, you have fruit. He says, no, I only have legumes because he's chayiv. Kidneys we call pears. Legumes are included in the word pears. Tano chitin, let's say he makes the claim for wheat and he admits to barley. He's potter. Will says he's liable. Let's say a person makes a claim for jugs of oil. He says, you owe me 10 barrels of oil. He says, no, I only owe you empty barrels. Admon says, this is a case of motive and mixus. He has to take note. No, it's not. It's not motive and mixus, not from the same type. He says, I agree with Tanu Kilim Bakarkos, let's say he makes a claim. Let's say he makes a claim for utensils and real estate. And he admits to the utensils, the kafar Bakarkos, and he denies the real estate. Bakarkos, or kafar Bakalim potter. Or if he did admit to the real estate and deny the utensils, exempt. Hodav mixes Hakarkos potter. Also, if he admitted to a portion of the real estate, is exempt. Mixes Kalim, but a portion of the utensils is chayav. Because if you have to take an oath on the movables, that forces you to have to take an oath on the real estate. We don't take an oath on something that was a claim that was made by the Chayra to the cotton, by the people who don't have agency. We can't make a minor flare. But if a minor comes with the claim of his father, then we have to take an oath, and also lahaktish, and also practice. How do we take an oath? Make him take an oath, like the oath is mentioned in the Torah that Avram said to Eliezer, make it take an oath by God. This is like that when you take the oath, you need to use the actual name of God. Without that, you don't have to. Without that, it's not considered to be a full oath, and you wouldn't have to pay back the fifth and the asha. And also over here, even if you use an associated, and so the question is, do you have to hold a mitzvah in your hand? Those judges who make you take by the actual name of God, and they don't make you just take a holy object in your hand. That's a That's a mistake, and so therefore you have to make him take the oath again with a holy object. Amar Papa Haidana Dashpia Betfilin. These judges who make people take an oath with tefillin, he's holding tefillin. Nasa Kamish Tabid Var Mishnah. Make them take an oath again because you need to actually hold a safe Torah. Laws like Rava and Rapapa. And if a person, since a person was not holding the holy object, therefore the law is like Rava, when Rava says that if you make him take an oath just by Hashem Shemaim without the holy object in your hand, you make him go back because you have to hold the holy object. And the law is not like Rapapa. That means that you need to hold specifically a Sefer Torah, but rather it's enough to hold tefillin because he's holding the tefillin. And so you don't need specifically a Sefer Torah. The person who takes the oath needs to be standing. Talmud Chacham can be sitting. Shvuah Sefer Torah, you have to ideally hold the Sefer Torah. Talmud Chacham but a Torah scholar can specifically hold the tefillin. This is today's daf, a beautiful daf, Yashakoa.